Sonic Frontiers is a good game. I feel like that is important to say right out of the gate so you don't have to wait long for that answer. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect game. Far from it. In this review, I'm going to say my thoughts on the game without spoiling anything major, like the story or the final boss, because I'm aware that it'll take a bit for most of my audience to beat this pretty long game. And I will go over everything in a spoiler review coming sometime later. But for right now, it's a new era for Sonic the Hedgehog and this channel. So with that said, let's jump right into the non-spoiler review. It's been 5 years since the last 3D mainline Sonic game. Sonic Forces, if you want to know my thoughts on that game, you can watch my review from 2017. My thoughts then still hold up now, but for a quick TLDR, I didn't like it. The game has horrible writing, horrible controls, the entire game felt very automatic and short, the level design was pretty much non-existent with everything being a linear hallway. Classic Sonic felt unnecessary, but the custom character was cool. But that's really the only positive I could give it. The game left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, especially because the trailer said it was from the team that brought you Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations. Which was a lie. In fact, some of the most important aspects, like level design, was done by newbies. The trailers also showed villains that you never even fight. A game we waited years for only lasted no more than 3 hours. This resulted in a huge loss of trust in Sonic Team, at least by yours truly. And I knew when they were going to announce the next game, I was going to be very, very cautious this time around. It was just a matter of waiting. And waiting we did, because during this last 5 years, we had games like Sonic Mania Plus, which was a nice DLC, Team Sonic Racing, which was a great soundtrack that came with the game apparently.
What up, Sonic Squad? Today we're doing some Sonic Racing. Ready? Let me show you how it's done. Gotta get these rings. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Sonic Colors Ultimate, which was ultimately disappointing due to its buggy release, and Sonic Origins, which is an okay collection for the most part, but definitely not the definitive way to play those classics. We also had 2 blockbuster movies which skyrocketed Sonic's relevance again. The first movie did an amazing job considering how it started. That's a placeholder, right? What the f- And Sonic Movie 2 is probably the best video game movie to date. Due to their success, it made me wonder what Sonic Team was cooking up their sleeve considering how many new fans the movies just made. They had to come out swinging. Then on May 27th, 2021, we were given a small teaser of what's to come next. And it didn't show much. It didn't have any gameplay, it didn't show what direction they were taking, apart from this strange cyber effect. Heck, we didn't even have a name for this game yet. But in just 2 hours after that small teaser, everyone will know what the game entails, because when Sega released this trailer to the public, the video file contained metadata. The metadata said the name, Sonic Rangers. When people looked up the name Sonic Rangers, it led to a 4chan post months prior in January 2021, where a focus tester claimed to be part of a focus group and they played a game called Sonic Rangers. They described the game as an open-world adventure game that takes heavy inspiration from Breath of the Wild. It has enemies, challenges, a skill tree that takes XP, a new move where a trail follows Sonic by holding Y, cyberspace stages that are like Generations, and a giant boss. But the scary part about all of this is that the playtester mentioned that what they played was not fun. But yeah, we knew that this was going to be our very first open-world styled Sonic game. That sounds cool and very ambitious, but I was very scared. The team that has made nothing but hallways is going open world? Okay, we'll see how this goes. But in the end, I knew for this to work, they needed to change the formula. Boost Sonic from Sonic Forces is not going to work in an open world without his movements being tweaked. But more so, I believe that we needed to bring back momentum/pinball physics platforming back into Sonic for the open world format to really be successful. I want the open world to be fun. And in my opinion, the best way to have fun is to give full control to the player and let them use their momentum to go around like it's a giant playground for Sonic. Then on December 9th, 2021, we got our first real trailer for the game, now called Sonic Frontiers, which showed the open world. And my reaction was kind of mixed. Oh, let me see the world, let me see the world. Please tell me it has loops and twists and twirls, okay. It looks beautiful. Please tell me it has loops and twists and twirls, okay. While the game looked beautiful, I was a bit put off by the world design. The lack of loops, corkscrews, and major hills for momentum-based platforming was immediately apparent. Now, that doesn't mean the game isn't going to be good. It's just going for a different style of gameplay, and different it was. Because on June 1st, 2022, we finally got our first bit of gameplay via IGN First that showed 7 minutes of the game, and wow, what a horrible way to reveal your game. This gameplay was so boring. It looked like there was nothing to do, and the things they were doing was just pressing buttons on super easy puzzles. It looked slow, they kept spamming the boost button every 5 seconds. Rails were everywhere, poppin' was very apparent. They kept on trying to make Sonic walk, making his animations look jank. The dream of having momentum was officially dead, and yeah, this killed a lot of my excitement for the game. Then next we saw the combat, and it looked promising. And as time went on and the more and more we saw of the game, like the bosses and the other islands and the dialogue, my excitement for the game grew back over time since that IGN video. I still had my gripes about it, like some animation and poppin', but I knew that that IGN video was a horrible representation of what the game was gonna be like. But now, it's here. Was the 5-year-long wait worth it for us Sonic fans? Let's find out now. But just a quick disclaimer, just like in my Sonic Origins review, I just want to say that I had the great pleasure of working with Sega to record and edit some of the gameplay footage for Sonic Frontiers and the Brazil Game Show Symphony concert. In no way do these opportunities affect my judgment of the game, and my opinions are strictly my own. So here we go. Because this is a non-spoiler review, I'm going to give my very general thoughts on the story without really going into specifics. The story and writing for this game is the best part of this game. Yes, I did just say that. For the first time in forever, a 3D Sonic game has an amazing story. It's well made. Sega, from now on, Ian Flynn is a must for any game going forward. If you are a longtime Sonic fan like me, you are going to love this game's character dynamics here. For the first time in forever, everything feels connected. There are callbacks to everything in this game, and it doesn't even feel forced either.
What a view! Makes me think of the falls and Mystic Ruins.
It feels natural. It's been so long since the Sonic universe had any form of continuity, and this game does it with flying colors.
These visions, they weren't like what Tikal showed us way back when, were they?
You can tell that Sega is finally staying true to the Sonic timeline. I'm not joking. Comparing this game's story to something like Sonic Forces or Sonic Lost World is like comparing an entire season of Avatar: The Last Airbender to an episode of SpongeBob.
You missed me!
It is that night and day. Sonic is finally cool again. At no point during this game did I ever feel like I was cringing at what a character was saying, and it never felt alienating for someone like me who's an older fan. At first, the game starts out with a somber mood to set the tone, but over time it begins to flourish and become lighthearted, and that's thanks to Sonic and the supporting cast of characters. They all bring something to the table, and it's great to see Sonic's friends no longer acting as glorified cheerleaders this time. And thanks to Sonic's friends and some of the things they talk about or go through, you're going to feel emotion, and as a result, you're going to be invested. I can count 3 times while playing this game where I felt a ball in my throat and my eyes started to well up with tears. It was beautiful, and without spoiling anything, the redemption arc in some of them was so satisfying to see as a fan who felt like these characters have been neglected for so long. Trust me, I'm dying to talk about it in more detail, but I'm gonna have to wait for the spoiler review, so stay tuned. Among the cast of characters you come to know and love, you also deal with a new foe named Sage, and she is far more interesting than Infinite in Forces, though I'm aware that's a very low bar. But I really liked her character in this game and the encounters you have with her. That's all I could say right now. The game centers around the ancients of Sonic's world and their origin, as well as uncovering what exactly happened to them. This was an interesting story because, while it is a new story, it is basing it on established lore in the series and even asking the hard-hitting questions about the origins of things you never really thought about, like the Chaos Emeralds. Where did they come from? How did they get here? Not everything is perfect though, and while I can't go into spoilers, I am going to say the ending of this game did feel a bit abrupt and not as satisfying as I hoped it'd be. But regardless, the journey along the way was still a great time. Along with the writing, the cutscenes accompanying them can range from great with awesome cinematic moments to very static and cheap. For much of the game, the characters just kinda stand around with not much movement. But when there is movement or an action scene, it is pretty well done, and I wish we had even more of those cinematic moments in this game. The voice acting in this game is also pretty good too across the board, apart from a few awkward deliveries from Sonic. You can tell Roger in this game toned his voice down a little bit and isn't trying so hard, and it did take some getting used to, but I thought it was okay. Not the best Sonic performance, but a nice change. Now let's talk about the meat and potatoes of Sonic Frontiers, the open zone islands and the gameplay. This game's graphics are beautiful, and as a result, the Starfall Islands are an incredible sight. The game has varying weather on the islands, which is a great attention to detail, and the day and night cycle is awesome to see fully implemented in a Sonic game. Something I'm still sad was cut from games like Sonic 06, but it makes for gorgeous moments at night or during sunsets. The beautiful waterfalls of Kronos, the sizzling sands of Ares, and the glowing red hot lava in Chaos Island are truly a sight to behold, and easily makes this game stand up to games like Sonic Unleashed in terms of beauty. But notice how I only mentioned those 3 islands in a game advertised to have 5. Now, I'm not avoiding spoilers or anything, but I do think it's important for people to know before going in that there really isn't 5 islands in this game. You have the 3 I mentioned, but you also have Rhea, Island 4, which is just the other half of Island 1, that you can't get to due to an invisible wall. And you are barely even there for more than 20 minutes throughout the story. Now, having 4 islands in your game isn't a big deal at all. I truly don't mind it. I just don't like the idea of people going in expecting 5 when they're honestly getting 4. Just something I think people should know. Which, speaking of the island's biomes, that's really it, as Island 5 Uranos looks the same as Island 1 and Island 4, which is disappointing. I was hoping for something like a snow world or at least one more biome to change it up, as the green grass can become tiring to look at. Regardless, the islands are huge and accommodate for Sonic speed well. It can take a while to run from one side of the island to the other, and each island has its own unique terrain and how easy it is to get from one objective to the other, which is good that Sonic can't just run forward. Sometimes there's an obstacle and he needs to run around a wall or something. There are also times though in the open world, and mainly in Chaos Island, where they start to incorporate 2D sections in the open world, and it feels like this could have been handled way better. There were countless times I was just running along and then BAM! I am locked on a spline and I can't move on my Z-axis anymore until I complete whatever obstacle course I just got myself into. Outside of that, I will say, the lack of loops, hills, and corkscrews are very apparent. The design of this game seems more based in realism, and not something you would guess would be in an area in the Sonic universe. Not to say that there are no loops or corkscrews, those do exist, but almost all of which are done via rails, automated sections, or cyberspace, which I will talk about later. There is a good amount to run and see in Sonic Frontiers, but not a lot of reward for exploring outside of the story. For example, after beating the game, I was just kind of standing on Island 1's tower and looking at Island 4's area. From here, I was able to see that there was a wall run path leading to somewhere on the side of the map. I was curious, so I booted up Island 4, ran to the area I saw, took the secret path on the side of the wall, and was greeted with nothing. And speaking of which, I feel like Island 4 had way more going for it, but was scrapped late in development. And I feel this way because there are platforms in the world that lead to nothing. The player wouldn't even otherwise see any of this, as this is all far from the story objective in this island, which is a shame as this is the island you saw the most in the trailers. Outside of Island 4 though, the islands themselves can seem rather flat, and any platforming is usually done via floating platforms and small obstacle courses, but I'm not quite sure this was the best approach. I would have liked these obstacle courses to be integrated in the world itself, rather than just floating above it. And by the way, on the topic of floating rails, I don't really have a problem with them floating in the world. I think my main problem is their aesthetics. These are considered ancient rails, but they don't really look like ancient rails. But that's just a nitpick. And on the topic of the floating platforms in this game, they do have some serious pop-in issues. Granted, you do get used to this over time, but I do hope future titles do address this issue. My initial fear for this game was that they were simply going to take Sonic Forces controls and throw Sonic into an open world. Well, I'm happy to say that that is not the case. Sonic in the open world in this game feels really, really good. Though I do want to warn right away, to play this game on the high speed style setting, even if this is your first Sonic game and not the action style setting, as his speed is just way too slow that it is unbearable in that setting. And I'm about to break some breaking news. Sonic, for the first time in a boost game, can turn. Oh my god, thank god he could turn. Sonic's turn is tight, especially while moving. he's not too precise like in Sonic 06, and he's not too loose feeling like in many of the recent Boost games. His mid-air controls feel very responsive and it makes platforming feel pretty good. The customizable controls and the options also helps with this. Here are my customizable controls for the game, and I believe they do a great job if you're curious. Now, I do want to talk about the obvious. Yes, there is a lack of momentum in Sonic's on-foot gameplay, which is why the world is lacking in traditional Sonic slopes. And I do hope this happens for future titles. Now, to be fair, since they didn't design the world with Sonic's momentum in mind, this honestly wasn't the worst. I still had a great time. But there is a problem with him having a lack of weight. For example, you could be boosting full speed, but the second you stop holding forward, Sonic will stop on a dime, which does feel a little off, and I do hope something like this can get addressed in future titles. But that's not all. Sonic's jump in this game does seem to kill any inertia and speed you had, and it does feel a bit deflating. But I do want to make this clear. That doesn't mean you can't get any airtime in this game. Oh, trust me. You can get some serious airtime. And doing this feels incredibly exhilarating. But you can only do that when you boost off a ramp without jumping. In fact, for some weird and inconsistent reason, if you were to jump off a rail by holding your jump button, you actually keep all your inertia and speed, and that feels incredibly exhilarating as well. But again, this only happens on rails and not on foot. And if you do want to do it on foot, you can only do it by boosting at a ramp without jumping. Sometimes. The game isn't really consistent on when it wants to do this. Sometimes Sonic can just act like a magnet on the floor. Nevertheless, it is super fun when those moments happen, and you can do some crazy stuff if you practice. This is where I think the movement really shines. Returning are all the basic moves Sonic has been known to have, like the air dash, double jump, the light speed dash, and the stomp. The air dash is okay, but I do feel like you don't go as far as you did before in previous games. But a nice trick in this game to go even further is to air dash immediately after hitting the homing attack button on an enemy. It is a great way to increase your distance. The double jump in this game is okay, but I do feel like if you use it to correct a jump you mismanaged, it can be tricky to turn around in midair. The best analogy I can use is that his double jump behaves in midair like Mario's awkward turn radius in 64. Not great for correcting over bottomless pits. The lightspeed dash is in this game, and that's great, but for some reason, every time Sonic performs it, he breaks at the end of the ring trail, which is why I believe a lot of the ring trails in this game end in a dash pad or a dash ring to compensate for this, which is really weird because I do not remember this happening in Sonic Forces. But yeah, this sometimes breaks the flow of the game. And the stomp attack works as usual, but now you can perform it 3 times in a row by holding down the button. And honestly, I would have liked to see the bounce attack from Sonic Adventure 2 make a return here. And for the first time in 3D, Sonic now has the drop dash. And I think it is great for going up terrain that Sonic can't otherwise climb. Though you do have to press the button 3 times now instead of twice, and it did take some getting used to. Now let's go into the new moves as Sonic Frontiers focuses on combat beyond the homing attack. Like in Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic unleashes a fury of punches and kicks. The new side loop ability is great and reminiscent of the pair loop mechanic from Knights. Almost all enemies get affected by the side loop, and it is usually the main thing to go to take down defenses. There's also a good number of other moves you can unlock via the skill tree. I personally love the quick side loop, which reminds me of the tornado attack from Sonic Heroes, as well as the Sonic Boom attack, which can feel a bit OP at times. But it is a great way to max out your combo meter, and when it is maxed out, Sonic goes crazy using the Phantom Rush attack, unleashing a fury of punch and kicks all over, straight out of an anime show. An important move to remember in Sonic Frontiers is the parry. In fact, I'll say it's damn near imperative that you learn this move. The parry allows Sonic to deliver a punishing blow to enemies if done correctly by countering their attack. The only downside is that the skill tree is small, and while some moves may have different animations, most of them all do the same thing, which is hurt the enemy. I do wish some of the moves had different effects on the enemies to give each its own unique twist on the combat. In terms of enemies, Sonic Frontiers houses a good variety. My favorite being the ninja and the tower, which are fun to take down. Some other enemies like the soldier are the basic enemy in this game, and can be taken down with a basic homing attack, but can start to get annoying to fight when they start having shields. Which is another great thing about Sonic Frontiers, is that any enemy you face in earlier islands becomes harder as you progress in the game. But I do wish they got even harder by the last island. Now, there are some annoying enemies in this game, like the jellyfish that steals your camera just by running by it in the desert world, as well as this wolf enemy that stops you in your tracks until you parry all of them. Outside of the basic enemies though, you also fight guardians, which are like the mini bosses of the game. I really do enjoy these. They are a lot of fun and are all different in how you take them down. Now, even though the combat in this game is fun, it can get a bit repetitive if you play for an extended period of time. Like other open world games, Sonic Frontiers houses some RPG elements, like Sonic being able to upgrade his attack and defense power by obtaining seeds, which you get by defeating enemies and fighting them around the world. When you take them to this Hermit Coco, he ranks you up depending on how many seeds you got. Now, this is fine and not hard to rank up the more you play the game. Sadly, I can't say the same for his friend, the Elder Coco. Excuse my language, but this guy. He is responsible for ranking up your ring capacity and your speed. To do so, you bring him the Coco you find around the world. The problem is, unlike his hermit friend, he doesn't care how many you bring him, you will only upgrade your stat points 1 point at a time, which is incredibly infuriating and not consistent. Why? This doesn't incentivize grinding, this incentivizes me pulling my hair out. My other problem with all of this is that the game is actually a bit misleading here. From my understanding, your speed level does not change your on-foot running speed. The only thing it does seem to change is your climbing speed. Of course, there is an ability in this game where if you do max your ring capacity to level 99, Sonic will be able to run at full speed while boosting without the need of having a full ring count. Which, speaking of, yes, depending on if your ring count is maxed, Sonic will run at different boost speeds, which I think is cool and it incentivizes players to not lose their rings and be a little more careful. And as a side note, I also like them incorporating more Sonic movie lightning elements into the games. Now let's talk progression in Sonic Frontiers. The first thing I recommend for everyone to do first is to complete the map as much as possible. To do this, you find puzzles that are next to these signposts and you must complete them. The majority of them is nothing more than just pressing some glowing buttons, which is kind of the opposite of what I want to do in a Sonic game, but it's not a deal breaker. I am surprised though, out of all the challenges in this game, not one of them is racing against another character of sorts. Imagine how fun it would be to race against some enemy in the big open world. That would be great. But again, it's not a big deal, these puzzles really weren't that bad. Once you have the map completed, you can easily find your friends. To talk to them, you need to find their character-specific tokens, and you can find them around the world by completing small obstacle courses around the map. That's really where a lot of the floating platforms come in. Along the way, you also need to get Chaos Emeralds. To do that, you need Vault Keys. To get Vault Keys, you can find them around the map or get them via How Well You Do in cyberspace. To enter cyberspace, you also need to get Portal Gears. And to do that, you need to take down enemies or guardians. In my opinion, cyberspace is a huge letdown of this game. Traditional boost stages acting like special stages? Count me in. But what I don't like is two major factors. One, Sonic's control in these stages are not as good as they are in the open world. He feels rather slow and stiff, and no settings can change this. But two, the level themes are all the same throughout the game, and it gets tiring quick. Most of the cyberspace levels are Green Hill, a level theme I am personally sick of seeing due to how much it returns. Some themes are Chemical Plant, another theme I am sick of seeing. A few others are Sky Sanctuary, which is fine, but kind of boring since we already saw this in Generations. And the one you see the least in cyberspace is, of course, the new one, the City theme, which looks cool and all, but it just makes me wish we had more new than old. Sadly, the level themes are not the only thing being reused. Level layouts are also returning from games like Sonic Generations and Unleashed, which is kind of a shame because a lot of us Sonic fans are still replaying those games and they still feel a little too fresh. So I feel like the magic of playing those stages are just not there. And if I'm honest, Frontiers' new gameplay style, especially in the cyberspace stages, clashes so hard with the design of the stages from Generations and Unleashed, because there is no dedicated drift button. Thankfully, it's not all doom and gloom. There are a few level layouts returning that haven't made a return in a long time, like Sonic Adventure 2 levels. And while not perfect, I do find those to be way more fun and matches better with the Frontiers gameplay style. In the end though, I do find cyberspace to be a bit cheap, and I do wish more effort was placed into them. The game does try to write into the story that the level reusing is part of Sonic's memories or whatever, but I don't think that's a good enough excuse. And the concept doesn't even really make sense considering, again, the city theme is brand new. Sounds like it was more about saving time and not making new assets. Now, don't get it twisted. I did have fun speedrunning these stages, especially when they are challenging, but sadly it is not that often when they are challenging. For some reason, stage 1-2, one of the first cyberspace stages you play in the game, is also the hardest one in the game. That's so bizarre, but I liked the challenge, and it made me wish the others were also designed like this. I will say, thankfully, after doing the first two cyberspace stages, if they aren't your cup of tea, they are completely optional. And you could get the Emerald Keys by scavenging around the world or by fishing with Big. Yes, you heard that right. Fishing makes a return, though it plays completely differently since Adventure. In the world, you will find purple fishing tokens. With them, you can fish with Big on every island. There is a plethora of fish and animals, as well as random funny assets you could collect in the Sonic universe. With enough of these, you can use the tokens you get to buy things from Big, like Coco, Emerald Keys, Portal Gears, Seeds, XP, and Eggman Logs. Which, speaking of, I recommend everyone get every single Eggman log and listen to all of them before you get to the end of the game. It adds to the lore, and there is some really cool references he talks about. While the fishing minigame is fun, I do wish there was another means of collecting stuff in Sonic Frontiers, like more minigames. Which, speaking of, some of the minigames are fun, but some can get annoying. The laser puzzle can take quite a while to get right, and the pinball is a complete pace breaker. 5 million points? Seriously? And that honestly would have been fine, but the second you die, you lose your multiplier and you have to start all over, and it's, oh god, it took forever. Now I'm going to talk about the best part of Sonic Frontiers without spoiling too much. The Titan bosses are without a doubt a new standard for Sonic boss fights. Now, I'm only going to show and talk about the first Titan boss to avoid spoiling a lot because there is a lot of surprises ahead, but oh my goodness. When I started fighting the first Titan boss on Kronos Island, I yelled out loud, "This is a Sonic game." And the music, oh my god, the music. It is some of the best the series has ever seen in a long time. Which, speaking of, by the way, the music in this game entirely is just fantastic. The slow open world music is amazing to set the tone. The cyberspace stages is actually really well done. I'm not even a big fan of EDM, but I actually really do like them. But the best, in my opinion, is by far the Titan vocal themes. It is so good. That's all I'm going to say right now, but please make sure you tune into my spoiler review coming soon, because I really want to go into these boss fights in more detail. The downside is that there is no way to replay these bosses without having to start a new save file. That is such a shame, and something that I hope that can be added later down the road, because these fights are iconic. The last thing I do want to mention for those about to jump into this game is to really take your time and enjoy the story and the experience. Because sadly, Sonic Frontiers doesn't really have an end game. The best thing about this game is the story and the adventure you go through. Be sure you play on hard mode, use the high-speed style gameplay, collect all the Eggman memos, go fishing, play cyberspace stages, complete the map, and enjoy forging your own frontier. Thank you guys so much for watching this non-spoiler review, and please note that there is a ton more I really want to talk about in this game, and I will be sure to cover everything in my spoiler review. So be sure you are subscribed with the bell icon clicked so you know when it releases. In the end, I really enjoyed my time with Sonic Frontiers. And while I did mention a good amount of stuff I didn't quite like or stuff that I found disappointing, I've played through this game around 3 times already, and I have no problem playing it again and again. And that says something. This game has something a lot of 3D modern games have been lacking lately, and that is replayability. While not perfect, this is a great step forward in the series, and I believe it is only going to get better if they stick to this format and polish it up even more. Maybe even incorporating momentum into the mix. Major kudos to Sonic Team for making an experience I won't forget anytime soon. The badass Sonic series I've come to know and love growing up is back, and the future is looking bright. Thank you all for watching this non-spoiler review. Please stay tuned to my spoiler review coming very soon. In Sonic Frontiers, while not a perfect game at all, I ended up having a lot of fun with this title, and I think it ended up being pretty dang good in the end. Now, before we go, I do have a very special announcement, and it's something that a lot of people have been hounding me for many years. So make sure you guys stay tuned to the very end. With all that said, I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you all for watching this video. This is Sam, signing out. See you later, Procrastinators.
Sam's brand new radical merchandise.
Exclusive to the channel, Procrastinates.
Custom and slick shirt designs.
Exclusive to the channel, Procrastinates.
Visit pixelempire.com and browse all these awesome shirts, all with groovy hoodie variants. Procrastinates does what productive don't. Order your Procrastinates patented merch now. Stocks won't last.